I don't know when the feeling started exactly. Looking back, I think it was there before anything actually went wrong. That quiet sense that something was just off. I'd used Facebook Marketplace plenty of times before, bought furniture, sold old electronics, met strangers in parking lots without a second thought. It was normal, convenient, safe enough as long as you were careful. That night felt no different at first. I had listed an old desk chair earlier that week. Nothing special, just something I wanted out of my apartment. It sat there for days without much interest, and I honestly forgot about it. Then late one night, my phone buzzed. Someone had messaged about the chair. It was around 9:30 p.m., later than I usually liked, but not unreasonable. The profile looked average. A name, a blurry photo that didn't really show much. No obvious red flags. He asked if the chair was still available. I said yes. He responded immediately and asked if he could pick it up tonight. I hesitated for a moment. I usually prefer daytime meetups, but I was already home and I didn't want the chair sitting around any longer. I suggested a grocery store parking lot nearby, public, well lit, 5 minutes from my place. He agreed instantly. No questions, no pushback. He asked what kind of car I drove. That gave me a brief pause, but I told myself it was probably about making sure the chair would fit nearby or something like that. I answered, keeping it vague. He replied, "Perfect. I'll be in a dark sedan." That was it. We agreed to meet in about 20 minutes. I carried the chair downstairs, loaded it into my trunk, and drove to the store. The parking lot was quieter than I expected. The store was open, but most people were already gone for the night. A few cars scattered around, enough to feel public but not busy. I parked under one of the lights and waited. After a couple of minutes, a dark sedan pulled into the lot and stopped a few spaces away from me. The headlights stayed on. The engine stayed running. I assumed it was him. I got out of my car and stood near the trunk, leaving it closed for the moment. I didn't approach his vehicle. I expected him to come over. He didn't. Instead, his window rolled down halfway. He asked if I was the one selling the chair. I said yes. He nodded but stayed seated, the light from his headlights washing over the front of my car. I opened the trunk and slid the chair out far enough for him to see it. He finally stepped out. Nothing about him stood out. Average height, hoodie pulled up, hands in his pockets. If anything, he looked like someone I wouldn't remember 5 minutes later. He walked around the chair, pressed on the seat, checked the legs. Normal buyer behavior, but his attention kept drifting back to my car. Not to the trunk, not to the chair, to the car itself. He said, "That's the one from the photos, right?" I said it was. Then he said something that caught me off guard. "You live pretty close, don't you?" I asked what he meant. He gestured vaguely and said, "You got here fast." It sounded casual, probably harmless. Still, I felt a slight tightening in my chest. I laughed it off and didn't press it. A moment later, he glanced at my car again and said, "Clean interior." That made no sense. My windows were tinted. The lights were off. There was no angle where he could have seen inside. I smiled and said thanks anyway, unsure how else to respond. He pulled out cash, counted it slowly, and handed it to me. The entire exchange felt rushed, like he wanted it over quickly. He loaded the chair into his back seat and closed the door. Before getting back into his car, he asked, "You live alone?" The question landed heavier than it should have. I hesitated just long enough to notice my own hesitation. "Yeah," I said, "just me." He nodded like he'd expected that answer. No comment, no follow-up. I said, "Have a good night." He looked at me for a moment longer than necessary, then said, "You too." We both got into our cars. I waited for him to pull out first. He didn't. His car stayed there, engine running, headlights on. After a few seconds, I pulled out instead. I told myself I was overthinking it. He was probably checking his phone, setting his GPS, anything normal. As I drove toward the exit of the parking lot, I glanced into my rearview mirror. The dark sedan pulled out behind me. I felt a small spike of unease, but I dismissed it. There were only a couple of ways out of the lot, and the main road led in the direction of my apartment anyway. Coincidence? I turned onto the road. He stayed behind me. Same distance, same speed. I told myself it still meant nothing. Then I made the first turn toward my neighborhood. The sedan followed. That was when the feeling changed. Not panic, not fear, just the slow realization that this might not be a coincidence anymore. At first, I tried to convince myself I was imagining it. The road out of the parking lot feeds into a main street, and plenty of people live in the same direction I do. It wouldn't be strange for someone to make the same turn, or even the next one. So I focused on the road ahead and kept driving. The sedan stayed behind me. Not tailgating, not falling back, just there. I told myself I'd relax once we hit the main stretch where traffic usually splits off. I slowed slightly, expecting him to pass or turn. He didn't. The space between our cars stayed perfectly consistent, like he was matching my speed without thinking about it. I made another turn. This one led off the main road and toward a quieter residential area. He followed. That's when I stopped telling myself it was nothing. I checked my mirrors more often now. Every time I did, the headlights were right where they'd been before. Not closer, not farther, just steady. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he lived nearby. Maybe this was just his route home. Maybe I was projecting because of how awkward the interaction had felt. Still, I couldn't shake the growing pressure in my chest. I decided to test it. At the next intersection, instead of turning toward my apartment, I continued straight. It was a longer way around, one I wouldn't normally take this late at night. The sedan stayed with me. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. I checked the clock on my dashboard. Only a few minutes had passed, but it felt longer. The streets grew quieter as I moved farther away from the main road. Fewer lights, fewer houses. At the next stop sign, I slowed almost to a crawl before turning. The sedan slowed too. No hesitation, no confusion. Just a smooth, controlled turn behind me. That was the moment I felt it in my stomach. The certainty. I wasn't being followed aggressively. There was no honking, no flashing lights, no sudden moves. But it felt intentional, like he didn't want me to panic. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and set it face up on the passenger seat. I didn't unlock it. I didn't call anyone. Just knowing it was there made me feel slightly less alone. I told myself I'd make one more test. Ahead was a small commercial strip, closed businesses, dark storefronts, an empty fast food parking lot. I signaled early and turned in. I drove slowly through the lot, passing dark windows and empty drive-through lanes. The sedan followed me in. That was it. My heart started to pound, not fast but heavy. Every beat felt louder than the last. I drove through the lot and exited on the opposite side, rejoining the road. The sedan exited right behind me. I considered calling the police, but what would I say? Someone is driving behind me. They haven't done anything. I just have a feeling. It didn't sound like enough. I needed witnesses. A few blocks ahead, I spotted a gas station. It was open, lights bright against the darkness. There were a couple of cars parked out front. I turned in without signaling. The sedan slowed at the entrance. For half a second, I thought he might keep going. Then he turned in too. I parked near the front under the lights and stayed in my car. My hands were shaking now. I could feel my pulse in my ears. The sedan parked a few spaces away. The engine stayed running. I didn't get out. Neither did he. I sat there, staring straight ahead, pretending to check my phone. In my peripheral vision, I could see the glow of his headlights reflecting off nearby windows. Seconds passed. Then a minute. I thought maybe this was where it ended. Maybe he'd realize I wasn't an easy target. Maybe he'd leave. Instead, his headlights turned off. The engine stayed on. That was worse. I forced myself to look. The car was still there, dark now, harder to see. I scanned the lot. The other cars hadn't moved. No one seemed to be paying attention. I stayed where I was, heart racing, trying to decide what to do next. That's when my phone buzzed. A message notification from Facebook Marketplace. I froze. Slowly, I picked up the phone. It was from him. The same profile picture, the same name. The message read, "Everything okay?" My mouth went dry. I didn't respond. Another message appeared almost immediately. "Just making sure you got home safe." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. There was no way he should have known where I was. I hadn't told him where I lived. I hadn't said I was heading home. And yet he was here. Behind me. Watching. I locked my car doors, even though they were probably already locked. I looked back up. The sedan's driver's side door opened. My breath caught in my throat. He didn't get out right away. He just stood there for a moment, half lit by the gas station lights. Then he stepped away from the car. Not toward the store. Toward me. I felt a surge of adrenaline unlike anything I'd felt before. I didn't think, I just acted. I threw the car into drive and hit the gas. I didn't look back as I tore out of the parking lot, tires squealing slightly as I turned back onto the road. In my rearview mirror, I saw the sedan's headlights flare back on. He was moving, and he was coming after me again. The road blurred as I accelerated. I wasn't speeding wildly, but I wasn't driving normally either. My focus narrowed to the stretch of asphalt ahead of me and the glow of headlights in my mirrors. I didn't need to look to know he was there. I could feel it. At the first intersection, I didn't slow down as much as I should have. I turned sharply, tires gripping just enough to keep control. My heart hammered against my ribs. I checked the mirror. The sedan made the turn too. Still not rushing. Still not aggressive. Just following. I told myself not to go home. Under no circumstances was I going to let him see where I lived. The thought of that dark sedan pulling into my apartment complex behind me made my stomach twist. I needed somewhere public, somewhere with people, somewhere I could disappear into. A hospital crossed my mind, police station too. Both were farther than I wanted to risk, but they were options. I took another turn, then another. Roads I knew, but ones I never took at night. The neighborhood thinned out, fewer houses, longer stretches of darkness between streetlights. Each turn confirmed it. He was still there. I tried one last test. At a four-way stop, I slowed completely, counted in my head. 1, 2, 3. I waited longer than necessary, then rolled forward like I was about to go straight, and turned hard at the last second. For the first time since leaving the gas station, the sedan hesitated. Not much. Just enough. My chest tightened. Then he turned too. That hesitation told me everything. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't someone going the same way. This was someone making decisions based on mine. I pressed the accelerator again, harder this time. I didn't care about looking suspicious anymore. I just wanted distance. The sedan didn't try to catch up. He stayed at that same measured distance, like he was confident I wasn't getting away. That terrified me more than if he'd been right on my bumper. I saw the sign for a shopping center ahead, mostly closed at this hour, but there was a 24-hour pharmacy attached. The parking lot was large, open, and brightly lit. I turned in. This time, I didn't hesitate. I drove straight toward the entrance and parked directly in front of the doors. I jumped out of my car. The cold night air hit me, sharp and grounding. I could hear my own breathing, fast and uneven. I glanced back toward the entrance of the lot. The sedan rolled in slowly. It didn't park. It just stopped. Right there at the edge of the lot, headlights washing over the pavement. I rushed inside the store. The automatic doors slid open, and the bright fluorescent lights felt unreal after the darkness outside. A couple of employees were behind the counter. One customer stood in an aisle, flipping through something on their phone. Normal people. Normal sounds. I stood just inside the entrance, pretending to browse, but my eyes kept drifting toward the glass doors. Through them, I could see the sedan. Still there. Still running. I waited. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Then the sedan pulled forward slightly and stopped again. My phone buzzed. Another message. I didn't want to look. I already knew who it was from. But I did. Why are you running? My hand started shaking again. I didn't respond. Another message followed almost immediately. You don't need to be scared. That was the moment fear turned into something sharper. Anger. Instinct. Survival. I walked up to the counter and leaned in toward the employee, lowering my voice. Hey, I said, there's a car outside that's been following me. Can I stay in here for a minute? The employee looked past me, out toward the parking lot. His expression shifted just slightly. "Yeah," he said, "of course." I stayed inside for nearly 10 minutes. During that time, the sedan didn't move. Not once. Eventually, I saw a police cruiser pull into the lot. Pure coincidence, I think. The officer got out and headed into the store, probably just doing a routine stop. The sedan's headlights went dark. Then the car reversed slowly and drove away. I watched until it disappeared onto the road. The officer asked if everything was okay. I told him what had happened, not every detail, just enough. He took it seriously enough to ask questions, but there wasn't much he could do. No threats, no confrontation, no laws broken. By the time I finally left the store, the road outside was empty. I didn't drive home right away. I circled, took the longest route possible, checked my mirrors constantly. Every set of headlights made my muscles tense. But the sedan didn't come back. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex, I parked as close to the building as possible and went straight inside. I locked the door behind me and stood there for a long time, listening. Nothing. No footsteps. No engine sounds. No knock. That night I barely slept. The next morning, I checked Facebook Marketplace. The conversation was gone. Not deleted. Gone. The profile didn't exist anymore. I searched the name, nothing. No message history, no blocked user, no record that he'd ever contacted me at all. I reported the listing interaction anyway, even though there was nothing to attach it to. I never heard anything back. I stopped using Marketplace after that. Not immediately. I told myself I would, but every time I opened the app, I felt that same tightness in my chest, the same memory of headlights in my mirror. I still check my rearview mirror more than I used to. Sometimes, when I'm stopped at night and I see a dark sedan behind me, my hands tighten on the wheel without me thinking about it. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he really was just concerned. But the hesitation at that intersection, the message timing, the way he stayed just far enough back, those don't feel like accidents. And I don't think they ever were. I didn't think about him for a while. Life has a way of burying things that don't leave marks. Weeks passed, then months. The memory dulled enough that it stopped intruding on my thoughts every time I drove at night. I almost convinced myself I'd exaggerated it. Almost. Then one evening, while scrolling aimlessly on my phone, I opened Facebook Marketplace without really thinking about it. The app loaded like it always did, rows of listings, familiar clutter, nothing unusual. I told myself I was just looking. I wasn't planning to buy or sell anything. That's when I saw it. A desk chair. The same model I'd sold. Same worn armrests. Same small tear in the fabric near the seat. Same scuff on one leg where the plastic had chipped. I stared at the photo longer than I should have. There was no way to be certain. It wasn't a rare chair. Thousands of them probably existed. Still, the similarities stacked up in my mind until coincidence felt thin. I clicked the listing. No description. No price. Just a single sentence. Still available. The seller's profile picture hadn't loaded yet. My stomach tightened. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. The app lagged sometimes. Profiles failed to load all the time. I scrolled down, forcing myself to look for something normal. Location, local. Very local. I backed out of the listing. Then, against my better judgment, I opened it again. This time, the profile picture appeared. It wasn't his face. It was my apartment parking lot. The angle was low, taken from inside a car. My building sat in the background, dimly lit. One of the streetlights was flickering, something I remembered complaining about to the property manager months earlier. I hadn't posted that photo anywhere. My hands felt cold. I checked the seller's name. It wasn't the same as before. But the account was new, barely any activity, no friends visible, no history. Just the listing. I closed the app. My phone buzzed almost immediately. A notification. Someone messaged you about an item. I didn't open it. I locked the phone and set it face down on the table. The room felt too quiet. I stood up and walked to the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to look down into the lot. Rows of parked cars sat motionless in the dark. Then at the far end, I saw a pair of headlights turn on. They didn't move. They just stayed there, pointed toward my building. I let the curtain fall back into place. I didn't check the message. I deleted the app that night. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd replied. If he would have asked again if it was still available. If he would have waited for me to come outside. Or if he already knew I was home.